right, can everyone hear me? All right, let's start with some housekeeping rules. I'd like to request everyone please to mute your microphone. We don't want any extraneous or background noise interfering with our proceedings, so we appreciate your cooperation on this matter. Thank you. And second housekeeping point is we encourage you, of course, to post your questions or comments or remarks as we go through the presentations by our distinguished speakers. I do not think that we will have time to address those questions, but we will be collecting all of your questions or comments. We'll be passing them on to our speakers, and we will request them to provide written questions, which we will then subsequently share with everyone. So thank you very much. So again, to formally open this special plenary session, our president, Dr. Giselle Concepcion, and I would like to welcome all of you very cordially to this plenary session, which is part of the celebration for the 40th anniversary of the Philippine-American Academy of Science and Engineering, or PAASE. So welcome everyone. To start the session, so we have two parts. The first part, which will last a little under 2 hours, would be the guest lectures of our distinguished guests and invited guests. And then the next part, which is about half an hour, would be an awarding of distinctive awards to some exceptional individuals that we are honoring today, and as part of the 40th anniversary of PAASE. So without further ado, we are starting the lecture series. I know that there is a title for these lectures, but looking at the presentations we're going to have, I actually just realized that they represent certain elements or features of what we refer to as the fourth industrial revolution, which really is the convergence of the physical, the digital, and the biological. And this convergence is really made possible by emergent technologies that we're all enjoying now worldwide, such as data and information systems, video algorithms, data analytics, artificial intelligence, robotics, automation, and so on and so forth. And today we will see all of these elements, or some of these elements, applied to various sectors, including in entertainment, including in public health and public administration, including in indoor agriculture, controlled environment systems, as well as in education, in terms of, particularly in terms of delivery and pedagogy. So we have a whole range of really exciting and interesting presentations this morning in the Philippines, this evening in the United States. So without further ado, we're going to start with our first distinguished speaker, who is Dr. Ann Aaron, who is currently the Director of Encoding Technologies at Netflix, which is in the Bay Area in Silicon Valley in the United States. Mon, I was wondering whether you could pull the introductory slide for Dr. Aaron. All right, so just to explicitly say this, the CVs, curriculum vita of every one of our guest speakers today, as well as the awardees, are very voluminous because they're very well accomplished. So I'm not gonna have the time to really highlight all of their accomplishments. So what I did was just, I picked 3 or 4 of their notable accomplishments to share with you, just by way of a short introduction. So again, Dr. Aaron is the Netflix Director of Encoding Technologies. She's got 8 technology patents with the United States Patent Office. 4 have been awarded and 4 are pending. She obtained her PhD as well as her Master's of Science in Electrical Engineering from Stanford. And she obtained 2 bachelor's degrees, one in computer engineering, the other one in physics at Ateneo de Manila University. So we're excited to have you and very much welcome Ann to PAASE, and I yield the floor to you.
Thank you, Dr. Coelho. Let me share my screen. Okay, can you all see it?
Yes.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you, wherever you may be. Magandang umaga, magandang hapon, magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. I'm Ann Aaron. I'm speaking from California, and more specifically, I'm in my home office here in Menlo Park in Silicon Valley, surrounded with my plants, if you can see it, to keep my spirit up these days. From social media, I heard that the term there is plantita, so I'm a newly minted plantita. I'm grateful for participating in this 40th anniversary of the Philippine-American Academy of Science and Engineering. But I'm also a bit sad because I should have been there in Manila giving this talk today. So last weekend was my dad's 70th birthday. And so my siblings and I and the grandkids, we were all supposed to be in Manila to celebrate the 70th birthday of Lolo. And so I think, so I'll start with a shout out to my dad who's probably watching right now. And it's relevant because my dad started as a chemical engineer and he gracefully transitioned into marketing and sales and a CEO, and then eventually went back to agriculture and farming there in Laguna. And farming and agriculture, as many of you know, is a very crucial sector of science for the Philippines. And I believe my own interest in science and math, I owe it to him and to my mom, who was also a math major in college. So before I go to the tech part, allow me to share a bit more about myself, since I'm probably not as well known or famous as the next speaker. So I was born and I grew up in Manila, and my interest in math and science led me to Agham Road, or Philippine Science, or PAASE for short. Then after that, as mentioned, I did my bachelor's degrees in physics and computer engineering at Ateneo de Manila University. At that time, actually, Father Ben Nebres was our president, so I know he's going to be recognized today. So hello, Father Ben. After Ateneo, I was hungry to learn more, and I was curious to see the world. So I applied to all the good engineering programs I could find out there, and ended up, fortunately, at Stanford. Okay, my son is here saying hello, but say hello. So my kids might come in. Hi. Fortunately, I ended up at Stanford University, and this is me and my mom almost 20 years ago. My first day at Stanford, and you can see how excited I was to be there. At Stanford, I did my PhD in electrical engineering, master's and PhD in electrical engineering, with my PhD research focused on video compression. And yes, people do PhDs in video compression. After that, I went to various Silicon Valley companies, startups mostly. Some of them did do well, some of them really didn't do well. And in 2011, I got laid off from my job. I had a baby who's now, he's here actually watching, who's now 9 years old. And I ended up interviewing for Netflix. This is my interview schedule then. And when I interviewed, I didn't look like the typical tech bro, but luckily I got the job. And at Netflix was a good environment for me to thrive. From there, I was a software engineer that eventually led teams at Netflix. As this article says, one of my main roles at Netflix is to make sure that Netflix doesn't buffer by making the files as small as possible. And here is a claim to fame. I was dubbed the stream queen. Here's my crown. This article was shared like 50,000 times. It's an article in the Philippines, but I'm sure half of that were my classmates, who some of them are watching, and my cousins too. But yeah, so that's my stream queen. So today, now going to the serious part, today I am Director of Encoding Technologies at Netflix. And hopefully you've all heard about Netflix. Hopefully you all watch Netflix. And in these days where we're all staying home and trying to stay home to be safe, I hope you find some comfort and some escape when you watch your Netflix shows. The team I lead is responsible for all the media that you see on the Netflix site. So the images, the video, the audio, the captions or subtitles when you're watching a show. And now that we are also producing our own movies and shows, we are also using these encoding technologies to improve the production process in making these shows and TVs and movies. So here are few of my favorite Netflix shows, and I was asking if there's a chat. So if you have favorite Netflix shows, please add it to the chat and share it with me. So that's The Crown, BoJack Horseman, which is both dark and funny, One Day at a Time, and Bodyguard, which is because the guy is, you know, very active and guapo. And of course, Crash Landing on You deserves 3 photos, my one and only K-drama that I've watched. So now let's go. How do we actually deliver these shows and movies to all of you? So I'm going to describe some of the building blocks of the Netflix streaming system, and with a bit more focus on the work that I've actually done on the encoding side. So first we start with the production or filming of the show and movie, which produces the final video and audio master of the show. And then it goes to encoding, where the system generates multiple versions of the files so that we can send it to all the devices and that people use to watch Netflix. And it can handle all the different network conditions. And then the files are sent all over the internet to deploy it, to store it. And our goal is to make these files as close as possible to our members. Lastly, we have the streaming engine, the running on TVs, laptops, phones. And once you hit play, it requests the files that are best suited to your device and from the closest storage possible. And my team is responsible for this part of the system, the encoding side. And our goal is to get you high quality watching experience while sending the least amount of data that we can. And so why is this a difficult problem? Well, if we don't do our job correctly, while you're watching a show, you would see this, and that's like a rebuffer, and you know, you're gonna be annoyed. Or you would see this. This is 11. You'll see her all pixelated. And for those who watch Stranger Things, you can't recognize her, and she almost looks like the monster, the Demogorgon. So we don't want this to happen. And so why is this? Yeah, this is what we do if we don't do our jobs correctly, but also why is this a difficult problem? It's because video itself is big data. So let's take an episode of Crash Landing, and I actually looked this up. This is episode 5. This episode is 60 minutes long, and a video is composed of multiple pictures. For this specific episode, this is about 115,000 pictures. And if you convert that to data, that is 206 gigabytes. Now, if you did make the file smaller, this would require 300 megabits per second of data. I don't think anyone here has that good internet connection. And even if you do, you have to share it with everyone in your house who are also probably on Zoom calls. So for us to be able to send this seamlessly throughout the world, we have to make the file smaller. And since Netflix is all over the world, some people may not have good bandwidth. Some people may be watching on their phones or accessing the internet primarily using their cell phone connection, which is also may be unreliable. And even in some places, for some members, they have strict data constraints, right? You may only have a prepaid plan where you have 1 gigabyte or 4 gigabyte. And we want you to be able to watch as many shows as you want and not use up all your data. So our goal is to be able to deliver these episodes seamlessly to all our members and reduce the data by 10 times, 100 times, even 1,000 times without hurting the picture quality. So how do we do this? This is where our work comes in. So before 2015, we were encoding our shows and movies all in the same way. It didn't matter whether it was a cartoon animation or something a bit more drama, like Orange is the New Black, or something with action. We were sending standard definition video at 1,000 kilobits per second. But part of my work, part of like PhD I did, was thinking that, look, these different content actually one has more smooth pictures and not a lot of movement. Some of them has more texture. So in the case of animation, you can actually send less data while delivering the same quality, and with the high action, then you need more data. So in 2015, one of my first research on algorithm work was to do per title encoding, where we were analyzing each show and each movie, and depending on the picture characteristics, the signal characteristics, we can optimize our encoding recipe for that piece of data. So something like BoJack Horseman, which is more smooth, no motion, you can send standard definition at 640 kilobits per second, but something that has more action would need closer to 900 or 1000 kilobits per second. Now, you're all familiar with watching movies or shows probably, and you can tell me like, but some scenes have more action, some scenes are smoother. So that's true, you know, you can have a Stranger Things where you have action, you can have like this more slower content, and you have some that are darker. So what we did even more was that instead of just analyzing each piece of episode or each movie, we were analyzing every single shot of the movie and adapting or optimizing our encoding recipes for each shot of movie. And with this lower level optimization, the bit rate that you saw earlier that ranged from 600 kilobits per second to 1000 kilobits per second, we can now bring down to as low as 250 kilobits per second. So with some of the recent innovation we have, we can send standard definition content to you at this bitrate. Now you can ask me, how do you know that you're lowering the data and you're actually not hurting picture quality? You're not making the video look pixelated like that. No, we cannot watch every single piece of movie that we encode and every single output that we encode. So this is something that we actually have to automate and check what the quality is. So that is another piece of research, and some of the patents that Dr. Coelho was talking about. This is some of the research that we've done, is how do we measure video quality without actually having people look at the video? And we did this by developing a metric by first getting ground truth data, where we had people look at scenes of a movie and rate the picture quality. And then we looked at the science of the human visual system to get features, and combining this ground truth data of people rating movies, the picture quality. So not like, you know, 1 star, 2 star for the actual content, but just the picture quality. Combining the human visual science with the ground truth data, combining it in a machine learning model, we have a metric that can predict the picture quality of our shows and movies. And that is how we can bring down the bit rates to these numbers, and knowing that we're actually not hurting quality. But what does, you know, there's the science and research behind it, but what does this actually mean for our members? So before 2015, if you had 6 gigabytes of data, you could only watch about 6 hours of Netflix. In 2015, when we were optimizing per title, this brought us up to about 10 hours of Netflix for 4 gigabytes of data. And now with the per shot optimization, you can watch 23 hours of Netflix. More importantly, that means that with 4 gigabytes of data, you can watch all episodes of Crash Landing on You, because if it was in 2015, you would only watch 10 hours. And, you know, that's medyo bitin, di ba? One way to think about our team at Netflix is that we want to, like Marie Kondo, we want to tidy up the bits that we send out there to reduce congestion on the internet. So every bit that we send out there on the internet should help spark joy that that our shows bring. Cheesy. So I will go now to the second part of our system, where just briefly talk about the deployment. So as I said, we want to store our shows as close to our members as possible. So this is a picture of the Netflix content delivery network, which we call Open Connect. So all these dots here are servers where we store our shows and movies. Here it says 12,000. This is about a year ago, so I'm sure it's much more than this today. And what we do is that, what we want is that it's as close to our members as possible, so that we have less rebuffers and lower delays in sending the data. And we do that by sending and storing this to those servers or caches during off-peak hours, which means that when you're sleeping and when you're not watching Netflix. So for example, we would have new episodes of Stranger Things, and when you're sleeping, we would send the new episodes to servers in Japan, and we have a bunch of servers in the Philippines. And then when you wake up, or in the middle of the day, in the evening when you want to watch, then you can watch these shows and movies directly from the caches or the servers that are in your region. And that reduces the need to transfer the data across the trans-Pacific fiber from the US to the shows. And so we can reduce the congestion across this pipe. And ultimately, what that means is just lower delay and less rebuffers to our members. Now let's move to the last part of our system, which is the adaptive streaming engine. So as you're probably all aware, now that we're all used to doing video conference calls, the networks in our houses or anywhere is quite unreliable, right? You're fluctuating, sometimes you get cut off. So this is an example of a throughput in your network condition. And it's stable, goes down, and it goes up. So how do we handle this when you're watching Netflix? Well, we do that by actually producing various quality levels of our shows and movies. So each there, the y-axis is quality, and all those different colors are different quality levels, which also respond to different bit rates. And so what happens is that when you click play, we have an adaptive streaming engine that looks at what the throughput is, estimates that, and then requests the quality that is suited for your network. So in this case, you would see that you're playing blue, and then you go to green, and then you go up to blue again. And hopefully, when it goes down here, it prevents you from rebuffering or stalling, and you would just see slightly lower quality. And hopefully this lower quality doesn't last too long, and it doesn't distract you from whatever exciting part of the show you're watching. So all this together, encoding, deployment, adaptive streaming, those are the types of technologies that we build. But ultimately what this means is that with this, they can all watch better picture quality with less rebuffers, whether that's my kids. So that's my kids watching Netflix here in California, or my mom watching Netflix on her iPad in Manila, or my nieces and nephews fighting over what cartoon to watch, also in Manila, or my sister in New Zealand enjoying her rest time in New Zealand. So that's the technology I helped build at Netflix. I know this conference, there's a lot of talk about health, about COVID and agriculture. And to be honest, sometimes when I look at what's happening around the world today, the pandemic, social injustice, inequity, the environment, sometimes this type of work feels smaller or insignificant. But then I also tell myself that, sharing stories is actually important. And I think sharing stories to the world is important because hopefully they can help change minds and maybe even actions too. So in my case, hopefully personally, it did change my views about a documentary like 13 helped change my mind on mass incarceration and the history of racial injustice in the US. It could change people's mind on immigration or homophobia for a show like One Day at a Time, or on caring more about the environment, like when you watch those beautiful scenes in Our Planet. And stories are also important, also simply because they help us connect and comfort us. I love how my sister can bring a bit of the Philippines to New Zealand as she watches her favorite Katniel movies, like She's Dating a Gangster, or I don't know what else, Can't Help Falling in Love. She can share a bit of the Philippines to her kids there. And I also love how I can bond with my family and friends from afar when we talk about K-drama. And during these times when the world feels a bit more stressful, I like how I can just stop thinking and turn on a silly reality show like Indian Brides or Indian wedding or Tiger King. So I think stories are important, and we build this technology for the ultimate goal that we can help share stories for connection, comfort, and hopefully even change. With that, I would like to end with this. You know, in my day-to-day job, aside from interacting with my colleagues at Netflix, I do work with other companies in Silicon Valley and a lot of tech companies around the world. Sadly, I don't encounter a lot of people like me, you know, Filipino, brown women, and I always question it. And I question it because I know that, you know, we Filipinos are as smart and as creative as the people I meet. And we are as smart, as creative, that we could build technology and innovate. And I know that we are as resourceful and as hardworking enough to overcome challenges. And I know we are as empathetic and even more empathetic sometimes to become great leaders of these companies and work towards greater good. So why are there less of us in tech, in Silicon Valley, and in tech in general? And I think the answer is simple, and it's because it's not a level playing field. You know, there are a lot of societal structures and a lot of societal injustices, both in our own communities in the Philippines, but also in the rest of the world, which deprive hard-working Filipinos of these opportunities. And I will not get into that topic because that's a long topic, and this is a tech symposium. But all I want to say is that us who have been blessed with privilege, let us find ways to change these social injustices and these social structures, whether that's through government, like the next speaker is going to speak about, or healthcare, or farming, or education, or even simply with sharing stories around the world. With that, thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aaron. We applaud you for such an excellent presentation. If you're just joining us, Dr. Aaron just completed or finished her presentation. So welcome to this plenary lecture. I'd like to encourage everyone as well to post your questions, which we won't have time to provide answers for, but I promise that I will get the written answers from Dr. Aaron and share them with you. But as the host, I have the prerogative of asking a couple of questions to Anne. So Anne, first of all, a comment in regard to your comment about the importance of storytelling. Storytelling really is, it's hard linked. It's in our brain as human beings. We all do storytelling. And for scientists and engineers, certainly we need to be better and more articulate when it comes to our storytelling, so that we could really convey to young people and to everyone the significance and the importance and the impact of what we are doing in the science and engineering community. And I'm sure, Anne, you relate to that because you are part of the science and engineering community as well. But two quick questions. The first one is, what do you see in the horizon, or what do you want to see in the horizon in terms of innovations or technologies that could further revolutionize the tasks that you're doing in terms of encoding and all the way to streaming?
Yeah, I think it doesn't stop there, right? I talked about 250 kilobits per second, but that's standard definition TV. I think all around the world, the need for entertainment is still going to increase. You know, people want 4K, want HDR. So I think just be enabling that. I mean, we're not done yet with that.
Right.
And this is a combination of, you know, we have faster machines, we have content, we're advancing what we know about signal processing. And so I think that's all that can help. There's, of course, machine learning.
All right, yeah. So just so you know, Netflix last year had a revenue of about 20 billion US dollars. So it really is a growing company, and it's not stopping there, I'm sure. I'm sure the revenue for 2020, particularly in the midst of the pandemic, is going to be much greater than that in 2019. Last question, please, is in terms of the processes that you're doing, again, from encoding all the way to streaming, how do you ensure the security of your data, of your movies, so that they don't get hacked?
Yeah, I mean, that is so we're very careful about security, whether that's the privacy of our members, and that's a good thing about being a subscription service, right? We don't rely on ads, so we take care of the privacy, the personal information of our members, and security. Being a premium entertainment company, we are contractually obligated to keep the security. So we have DRM. You know, all our content is DRM. Then sometimes that's sometimes one of the blocks that we have for deployment. You know, we have some devices out there that are not securely DRM, so we can't deliver to that. And so that combination of DRM, encrypting our files on the servers, having people not having access, especially to preview content. So that's when you've released the show into the wild, you know, anyone can do a screen grab, you know, or flow quality. But when that show hasn't been released, we're very, very careful about who can access those shows.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Aaron, and I hope that you will stay on for our next lecturers, as well as for the awarding ceremony, of course.
Yes.
We give you our virtual thunderous applause. Thank you.
Thank you.
All